Hello, my name is Dr. Margaret Harper, and I'm looking forward to introducing you to the basics of French classic organ music today. This series of 3 videos is designed to work together to introduce you to the major genres and stylistic elements of French classic organ music. Each episode focuses on one composer and is generally graded in difficulty. This is the second video in the series, and it focuses on the music of Pierre Du Mage. Our other episodes examine the music of François Couperin and Nicolas de Grigny. I am delighted to be able to demonstrate this music for you on an organ inspired by and built in the style of a French classic organ by Jean Bedient. There is tremendous benefit to studying music on the sort of instrument that originally inspired its composition. After all, a truly excellent organ is often the best teacher of all. Pierre Du Mage lived in the middle of the French classic era, between 1674 and 1751. He was from a family of musicians and took his first lessons from his father, who was the organist at Saint-Pierre Cathedral in Beauvais. After studying with Louis Marchand in Paris, Pierre earned the position of organist at Saint-Quentin Church in northern France. This position came with the opportunity to preside over a brand new organ built by Crowe, the most important organ builder of the French classic era. Dumage later became organist at the Cathedral of Laon, but ultimately spent the latter portion of his life out of the musical profession. Dumage's Livre d'Orgue was published in 1708. Livre d'Orgue literally means organ book and was a standard title for volumes containing organ masses or versets. Dumage's Livre d'Orgue contains only one suite of versets, which are in the Dorian mode. This suite follows the basic outline of a typical French classic set of verses that we outlined in the last episode. First a plein jeu and last a grand jeu, which contain between them a series of colorful verses with contrasting styles and sounds. In this set, these inner verses are fugue, trio, tierce en taille, basse de trompette, récit, and duo. Dumage's plein jeu follows a different form than the Couperin plein jeu that we studied in our previous episode. Here, Dumage opens on the petit plein jeu, which means the principal chorus on the positif alone. Dumage's writing features a series of fast flourishes and ornaments over a sustained D in the left hand. 11 measures of this tempestuous writing concludes in a strong cadence in D minor and leads to a transition to the grand plein jeu. This is to be played on coupled keyboards. Here, the full resources of the organ are employed. Here, the composer includes in the lowest voice a bass line that creates a strong sense of progressive harmony. This allows Dumage's plein jeu to have a driving sense of forward movement, building to its final conclusion in D major. Let's look next at the trio that forms the third verset within this suite. Trios in French classic music typically involve two treble voices played by the right hand and a lively lower part in the left hand. Either of the hands can play on the jeu de tierce, and the other hand can play either also on the jeu de tierce or on the cromorne or the trompette. Today, we will hear the two voices in the right hand played on the jeu de tierce and the left hand played on the trompette. Note that the trompette is used in the trio as a lyrical stop. On modern organs, we most often associate the trumpet stop with fanfares and bold statements. It's sometimes used this way in French classic music, like in the Basse de trompette we will hear later in this episode, but it can also be used in a more gentle context, as in this trio. Most registration indications for the trio indicate that the tremblement doux, which means soft tremulant, should be used. The use of the tremblement indicates that trios were typically played at a moderate tempo, as the tremblement would have been essentially inaudible in a fast piece. The combination of the tremblement doux, ornaments on downbeats, and lyrical swirling eighth notes create a gentle, introspective piece. The fourth verset in Dumage's Livre d'Orgue is a Récit de tierce en taille, that is, a verset where the solo voice is played in the tenor, taille, range, and is played on the jeu de tierce. French classic organ suites feature two varieties of the Récit. A récit, within the context of French classic organ music, is a verset featuring a solo voice that is expressive in nature and uses great variety and freedom in rhythm to imitate the human voice. The two varieties of récit are divided by the range in which the solo voice is written. In the soprano, dessous, or in the tenor, taille. The Récit de tierce en taille is the most intimate and expressive genre in French classic music. It is home to some of the most poignant expressions of emotion that can be found in music from this era. Dumage's tierce en taille is no exception. The jeu de tierce takes on a much more nasal quality in the lower ranges of the keyboard. Mutation stops, like the tierce, that is, stops that play a pitch other than the notated one, tend to be easier to pick out from their supporting stops the lower on the keyboard you go. This makes the color of the solo voice in a tierce en taille registration very distinctive. Listen, for instance, to the blend of stops on the jeu de tierce played in a descending chromatic scale. The tierce en taille typically features a tremendous amount of ornamentation and fast flourishes, accompanied by slowly changing harmonies in accompanying voices. The accompanimental voices on the manuals sometimes even feature a 16-foot stop to add a sense of gravitas. Dumage's Livre d'Orgue has a charming example of the genre of basse de trompette. This music features a jocund solo bass voice to be played on the trumpet stop. The solo voice, as is typical in this style, has many scalar runs, but also long sequences of large leaps ranging from a fifth to an octave. These sequences of leaps create a lively character, always moving the listener forward. The accompanimental voices, played here on the Bourdon 8 and Preston 4, fill out harmonies with a fair share of ornaments to add even more excitement. The basse de trompette is, above all else, a joyful genre. The basse de trompette is an excellent example of the French classic concept of note inégale. As the name note inégale suggests, it is a technique wherein a musician plays notes unequally. In other words, not all notes that appear to have equal rhythmic values on the page should actually be played the same. Note inégale, like many elements of French classic music, is subject to the taste of the performer, but there are a few rules that are helpful to know. First, note inégale is typically applied to the smallest rhythmic value that is uniformly present in a piece. In the vast majority of cases, note inégale will be applied at the eighth note level. Second, note inégale works best for stepwise motion. If there are lots of eighth notes in a piece, but they move primarily by leaping, inégale would not be used. Third, note inégale should not be uniform. In general, the first of a pair of two eighth notes should be played longer and the second shorter. However, this should not create an identically repeated unequal rhythm that sounds precisely the same for every pairing of two eighth notes. Note that in the beginning of Dumage's basse de trompette, the solo voice has a long eighth note run in stepwise motion. You will recall that note inégale should be used for eighth note scalar runs. However, the speech of trumpet pipes at the low end of the keyboard requires this to be modified as scales descend. Note that as I descended, I played slightly less inégale to allow the trumpet pipes to all speak well. Later, in Dumage's basse de trompette, we encounter another typical style for this genre, with the solo voice leaping large intervals and outlining chords. Here, note inégale is not appropriate. Following traditional forms, Dumage's Livre d'Orgue ends with a rousing dialogue sur le grand jeu. Dumage's dialogue features extensive use of sequence and echoes between keyboards, showcasing the riches of the French classic organ. I hope that you have enjoyed this introduction to the music of Pierre Du Mage, and I hope that you will continue on with our next 2 episodes, which feature the stunning music of François Couperin and Nicolas de Grigny. I also encourage you to begin reading about French classic organ music. 2 books that are a fantastic introduction to this style are The Language of the Classical French Organ by Fenner Douglas and Organ and Interpretation, the French École Classique by Paolo Crivellaro. The music of the French Baroque is astoundingly rich in color, expression, and creativity. It is immensely engaging music to play and to hear.